Hi everyone, welcome to my history class. And today we will be talking about the French Revolution, and that's the chapter for class ninth, part 2. And let's see what all we have for you in part 2 today. First, we will discuss about the rise of the middle classes. Second, we will also discuss about the ideas of philosophers. First, about John Locke. Second, Jean Jacques Rousseau. And third, Montesquieu. So these three were the famous philosophers, and not only this, we will also deal with their philosophies in detail as well. And third, the spread of their ideas. So this is all that we are going to do today in part 2. But before moving on, we should look at the map of Europe. Why? Because in France, the French Revolution took place, and not only this, in 18th century, the monarchy in France weakened and ended with French Revolution in 1789. And France was also the birthplace of many political philosophers as well. Now, if I talk about the rise of middle classes in the 18th century, this is the first subtopic. Now, we had peasants and workers who were protesting. Now, what was the reason for their protest? First, as there was increase in the taxes. Second, there was scarcity of food. And third, because of subsistence crisis. And because of these factors, it led to struggle for survival. Not only this, people became more agitated. Now let's find out whether the protest that was done by the peasants and the workers was successful. The protest of these peasants and workers was not very successful. I'll repeat again, the protest of the peasants and workers was not very successful, and they failed to carry on with their struggle. Now, what was the reason that why their protest was not successful and why they failed to carry on with their struggle? Because they lacked the financial means, they lacked the organizational capability, and they lacked the planning and program. And as a consequence, the social and economic order could not change. So, as a consequence, the social and economic order could not change. But then what happened? What was the next step? That from within the third estate itself emerged a prosperous group who could get education, and this group came up with innovative thoughts and ideas, and this social group which was formed was called as the middle classes. Now if we recapitulate who all comes under third estate, first, the peasants and artisans. Second, landless labor and servants. Third, manufacturers, businessmen, merchants, and professionals like the officials and the lawyers. Now, these were the social classes which are coming under the third estate. But who all form the middle classes? That's a question. The manufacturers, the businessmen, the merchants, and professionals like the officials and the lawyers, they form the middle classes. Now, these manufacturers and merchants, they also became affluent. How? because they started manufacturing the woolen and silk textiles and other goods, and they were selling it to the wealthy people. Not only this, there was expansion of the foreign trade as well. On the other side, we have professionals such as the lawyers or administrative officials who also became educated, and they were inspired by the ideas of the political thinkers of the Enlightenment age. They believed in equality and they believed in freedom. Not only this, they even said that the social groups should not be privileged by birth. If you remember, we had the first estate, that's the clergy, and second estate, that's nobility. These two estates were having certain privileges by birth. So that's why these professionals, they said that the social groups should not be privileged by birth. And secondly, that the social position should be merit based. So now just we will look at small information about what is an enlightenment age. 18th century is referred to as the age of enlightenment or the age of reason in Western Europe, particularly in France, because many philosophers had strong influence on the revolutionaries. So, the Age of Enlightenment or the Age of Reason was a philosophical movement in France that took place in 17th and 18th century, and that advocated the use of reason and the use of science instead of superstition and tradition, and it is often associated with the political revolutions, especially the French Revolution of 1789. So we have some philosophers like John Locke and Rousseau who visualized a just society based upon the ideas of freedom, based upon the ideas of equality, and based upon the ideas of equal opportunities for all. Now let's look at John Locke. Now, one by one, we will be discussing in detail their philosophies. So, John Locke was the English philosopher, and his time period is from 1632 to 1704, and he wrote one of his famous book called the Two Treatises of Government, as you can see in the picture as well. And Locke believed that all men are created equal by God. Nature does not create inequality. Absolute monarchy is a violation of the law of nature. So this absolute monarchy leads to extreme inequality. Rightful authority of the king depended on the consent of the people. So king has the rightful authority only when the people give consent to it and agree upon it. And he even rejected the absolute power of the king. He even acknowledged that revolution is a right that becomes an obligation in extreme situation. These were the philosophies of John Locke. Now let's come to Rousseau. Now he belonged to Geneva, and his time period is from 1712 to 1778. And he also wrote a famous book called The Social Contract. He got inspired by the ideas of John Locke, and he believed that man is born free, and he advocated forming of government through a social contract. And that social contract should be between people and their representatives. Montesquieu. Now he belonged from France and his time period is from 1689 to 1755. And he has also written one of the famous books, that is The Spirit of the Laws. He stressed on the constitutional system of government. He proposed separation and balance of power in the government amongst its three different branches, that are the legislative, executive, and judiciary. So he proposed separation and balance of power in the government amongst its three different branches. Which are those three different branches? Legislative, executive, and judiciary. Right? Legislative makes the laws, executive will execute those laws, and judiciary will make sure that the laws are being executed. His political theory of separation of power of the government influenced the drafting of the Constitution of the USA when the 13 colonies became independent from the Great Britain. The American Constitution and its guarantee of individual rights and liberty, it inspired the future political thinkers. Now these philosophers of 17th and 18th century have been discussed in detail. Why? Because the ideas were new. Second, they were revolutionizing the minds of depressed masses. They provided the alternative way of ruling the country where the representative of the people would rule. Their ideas challenged the absolute power of the monarchy and they advocated individuals' rights and equality. Now, how the ideas were spread? They were spread how? When they were discussed and debated in the public places like the salon and coffee houses, maybe through the writings in books and newspapers, and for uneducated, the ideas of great philosophers were read to them. So the ideas of Enlightenment philosophers made people aware of individual liberty and opposition to absolute monarchy. And the ideas of the philosophers had a profound impact on the minds of the people, that when they heard the news that now King Louis XVI will impose more taxes to meet the expenses of the state, people were furious and protested against the system of privileges by which only the first and the second estate were benefited. And hence the revolutionary feelings began to rise. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you.